So nice to be with you here. You know, we're closer to the sea here in Newcastle or Gateshead than we are in Chicago.
Very true, but we have our own little sea.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
supposedly Sassoon, who is Wilfred Owen's kind of inspiration to write trench poetry or poetry about the war. He was an officer, and he was very critical of the war. And he brought this criticism to the House of Commons. And because of that, the military decided here that he was crazy. And they sent him to a mental hospital where he met Owen, and that's how they became friends and how they inspired each other. But before he did, he took his medals that he had received during the war and threw them in the ocean.
Wow.
A little bit of resistant history that probably doesn't get told, but you know, transcends over to the Vietnam vets and the Iraq and Afghanistan vets.
I remember actually watching the live stream of you and your comrades from IVAW, the Iraq Veterans Against the War, throwing the medals back at the NATO conference that was happening in Chicago at that time.
Yeah, we asked to ceremoniously return them, but they refused. So
You tried to be polite.
we tried to be polite, but they didn't want their global war on terrorism medals back. So we had to throw them back.
So all of these entanglements in your work, I mean, it's something that I feel like we have in common, and it's a nice place for us to start. Now, you were mentioning the Requiem. So Britain's Requiem.
Well, Sassoon, who is kind of this, edits Wilfred Owen's first set of poems after he's died.
What's Sassoon's first name?
Siegfried Sassoon
Okay.
publishes the first collection of Wilfred Owen and his poems, and that collection is what Britain then uses to compose the War Requiem. He uses 9 of Owen's poems, and they kind of create this structure, and those same 9 poems we used in this project to bounce off of and connect basically this lineage that in many ways is still perpetuated today.
And then it becomes a further entanglement because this name Siegfried Sassoon, it's an Iraqi name, Sassoon.
Oh.
And if it's spelled Sassoon, so this is an Iraqi Jewish name. And my family comes from the Sassoon family. So the Shamoun and the Sassoons line up. Of course, there's Joseph Sassoon and David Sassoon. It's a British lineage.
Oh, wow.
Well, Iraqi emigrating to Britain and then having political clout. But my mother's mother, Renee Shamoun, comes from the Sassoon family. So again, these moments of entanglement that happen in these works, you know, where your own network travels with you. This is a beautiful thing that I've participated in things with you. You've participated in things with me, and it feels like every time we do it, it's like, you know, a stone that's gathering all of these other stones with it, you know, that becomes almost like a glacier moving through time. So seeing all these people that you bring with you and new relationships that form with Maestro Karim Wasfi. You know, being able to reach out to people who are inspiring you, that you're watching from afar and creating these intimate spaces that close the gaps it's striking to watch it and to watch it continuously, because it's not just in the moment and for the time of the exhibition, it actually is like extending a family. But also thinking about the way in which people will often remark in their recollections about war, about camaraderie, and about how everybody has their back. And I'm interested in how these new alliances that push against the war machine have really been nurtured and have been the kind of thing that has found life through your work.
Father says kill. Father says destroy the mountain. Oh, Sada, oh, Mosul, this day, like our wars, is long. Behold, everywhere the dead and living vacillate. Only squeeze my heart, break my gaze, caress her arms.
You gave this gift of this prize to me, and I just feel like it's a gift that I need to return, and it's important to share that gift with the whole family and the whole community. And I'm been humbled to then be able to connect with Kareem Wasfi and his work of making this beautiful music despite in Iraq. And it just resonated with me so powerfully, thinking of Owen's poems. Even though he was very disillusioned, he was still writing poetry and connecting with people and sharing his humanity and the humanity of this experience of horror, really. And I think Kareem was doing that in the same way. He's pushing back on that horror and, making a space for civility and humanity despite. And any way that I could share that gift out and return that gift to the community was really important. I couldn't think of anybody more, so much more deserving than me was Kareem. So I've just been honored that all these voices have come onto the project. And that's something I've learned from the Iraqi culture, that hospitality and generosity is something that reflects one's humanity, and it's something I'm trying to learn to embody.
And I think you come to it with this lived experience that is in you, it's in your body, it's in who you are. So it never feels performed, which makes it clear that that there was always going to be that connection between you and humans all over the world. One of the things that I was really very moved by in looking at these woodblock prints that are on display in your project is the purposeful way in which that color from the maestro's cello is transmitted and conducted onto the frame. And this idea of framing, a musical piece is framed. It's a composition. It's something that can be performed and then re-performed. The really rich part of what you've been involved in and what you've been able to kind of continuously transmit is that even in this moments of critique and in these moments where, yes, there's anger, there's devastation, there's trauma, there's grief, there's also a necessity to regenerate, and that becomes the kind of hopeful layer to it. And it makes me want to ask the question of what music were you listening to when you did the drawings for the images?
I was actually listening, when I'm working on the drawings, I listened to a lot of Britten's War Requiem over and over again, kind of learning the pieces. But I also listened to Kareem's work, the Baghdad Morning piece that's on, there's a recording on NPR that I could play, and there's a few other pieces that I could play over and over, and even though I was repeating the same pieces, there was it was such a meditative space, and there was a connection. And from the first time that Kareem and I spoke, he talked about and this idea that poetry and music and beauty, despite. And I bringing up this story as another powerful example of how those things do overcome and transform some of the worst things.